Hi everyone, it is BinZhuang, a postdoc from your Edge and supervised by Professor Noel Logas. Here I would like to introduce our recent work about studying the role of successive and interacting CMEs in the acceleration and release of solar energetic particles. This presentation contains 4 parts: the background, the identification of twin CME large SCP event in solar cycle 24, the role of CME-CME interaction on the particle acceleration and release, and finally the summary. SCPs are high-energy particles coming from the sun, and they are very important in space weather study and space weather. SCPs are traditionally characterized as impulsive and gradual events. Let's see this figure. It shows an observation of gradual and impulsive SCP events. Previous studies found that large gradual SCP events are always associated with interplanetary shocks driven by fast and wide coronal mass ejections. Here, the large means the ion flux with energy above 10 MeV is above 10 PFU. And this figure shows a very famous eruption on September 10, 2017, and its associated large SCP observations. Previous statistical studies found there exist correlations between CME properties and SCP peak intensities. For example, the fast CMEs can always lead to SCP event with relatively higher peak intensities, but the relation sometimes shows a high degree of scatter, and this figure just shows an example. The data points in this figure are not well linearly correlated. So, to interpret the scatter, a scenario of fast primary CME associated with one or more preceding CMEs was found to be a possibility to account for an enhanced SCP peak intensity. This figure just shows a case of successive CME eruptions, the preceding CME and the primary CME. And the preconditioning effect of the preceding CMEs on producing SCP was proposed by Gopal-Swamy. Later, the twin CME scenario was proposed by Lee, and in this twin CME scenario, the primary CME and the preceding CME erupts from the same or nearby source regions, while the preceding CME creates an environment for more efficient particle accelerations with both an axis of the seed populations and an enhanced turbulence level at the front of the primary CME. And extended from the twin CME scenario, few statistical and case studies have shown up. For example, in 2013, Dean studied all the SCP and CME events in solar cycle 23, and they found that the SCP events with higher peak intensities are always associated with successive CMEs, though their study used observations from a single viewpoint. And this is a case showing the twin CME eruptions and its associated large SCP observations here. They found that the SCP or the particles is released just at the time when the primary CME hits the preceding CME. Now we can find so many studies on CMEs and SCPs, and we still have 3 questions. And these 3 questions triggered our following studies. The first question is, do successive CMEs in the twin CME events have spatial overlap in the 3D space instead of the projected plan? Thanks to the launch of twin stereo spacecraft in 2006, it enables our observations from multiple viewpoints. The second question is, does the interaction between successive CMEs play a role in large SEP events? This was previously raised by Keller and Bolidas. They found that neither the timing of the preceding CME relative to the primary CMEs, nor the width, speed, or numbers of the preceding CMEs correlates with the SEP peak intensities. However, they found that the SEP IP correlates well with the two MEV proton background intensities, just shown in this figure. This indicates that the SEP peak intensities may be controlled by the level of the solar activities. The third question is, what is the association of the acceleration and the release of SEPs with CME-CME interaction? We know that in twin CME scenario, CMEs have different speeds and time interval. This will lead to different types of CME-CME interaction. And there exist four types: no interaction, the shock of the primary CME interacts with the preceding magnetic ejector, the interaction between the two ejectors, and the interaction between the two CME-driven shocks. So we start our identification of twin CME events at first. We found a large SEP events in solar cycle 24 and determine whether they are within the twin CME scenario. Let me show you how the multiple observations can influence our identification at first. In this middle panel, observed only by Soho-Lasko, you can find the two CMEs, the preceding one and the primary one. Based on these observations, you can deduce that the two CMEs may be interacted with each other. However, after combining the observations for stereo B and stereo A, you can see that both CMEs are propagating along two different directions, and they won't interact. So we do the identifications by single viewpoint and by multiple viewpoint observations. And here is the result. We have in total 41 events, and the identification criteria is shown here. The first is the time interval between the two CMEs is less than 9 hours. The second is the speed and angular width of the preceding CME are larger than 300 km per second and 20 degrees. The third is both CMEs will have spatial overlap in the projected plane or in 3D space. And this figure shows the statistical result. Based on this figure and this table, here is our conclusions. Based on only single viewpoint observations, we identified the 21 events in twin CME scenario and the 20 in non-twin CME scenario. Based on multiple viewpoints observations, we only identified 11 events in twin CME scenario. The percentage decreases from 41 to 27. And based on this figure, we can find that the SEP peak intensities in the twin CME scenario will have a relatively higher peak intensities. And we also found there exist correlations between SEP peak intensity and the CME 3D speed, just shown here. We then studied the role of the CME-CME interaction on the particle acceleration and the release. So we needed the CME 3D propagation information and the particle information. As for the CME 3D information, we used the graduated cylindrical shell model to fit the CME propagation direction, the angular width, and finally derive its speed. This GCS model assumes CME have flex-rope structure, and this figure here just shows the reconstructed result. As for the particle acceleration, we use the information from the type 2 radio burst, because we know that type 2 radio bursts are thought to be generated by the CME-driven shock. And as for the particle release information, we use the velocity dispersion analysis called VDA. VDA assumes the first arrival particles with different energies are released at the same time near the sun, and they will propagate along the same path length. And this figure just shows the VDA results, and then we combine the CME and the particle information together and get this result. Let me describe the details. Here the black and the green lines are related to the leading edge and the trailing edge of the preceding CME. Here the leading edge is its front, and the trailing edge is the tail of the circular main part. The red line refers to the leading edge of the primary CME, and the orange one refers to the primary CME front along the propagation direction of the preceding CME, because we know that both CMEs can not always propagate along the same direction. And this blue dotted line indicates the onset time of the type 2 radio burst, and the black dotted line indicates the particle release time. Combine this information, we found that the CME-CME interaction starts before the particle release and particle acceleration and then release. So it can say that when the particle is accelerated and released, the CME-CME interaction are very meaningful. We then perform the similar analysis on the left 10 event and get the results in this figure. We then focus on the interaction type and the particle acceleration and the following release. We use this figure to illustrate the result. In this figure, here the green region indicates the region of the preceding CME, and this is the trailing edge, and this is the leading edge. The normalized distance is calculated by these two equations, and the data point here means here the diamond means the normalized distance at the particle released time, and the horizontal bar, the left end of the horizontal bar, indicates the particle acceleration time, and the release time is derived by VDA and the method, and the left end is derived by the type 2 radio burst. And in general, based on this figure, if the primary CME can't hit the preceding CME, the data point will lie in this region. If there exists interaction between both CMEs, the data point will lie in this region or even exceed the right boundary. So we found that as for 6 of 11 events, the primary CME is far away from catching up with the preceding CME when the particles are released. However, SAP event will have relatively higher peak intensities if the particles are released at a time when the CMEs are meaningfully interacted or close to each other. So finally, we move to the summary. We studied large SAP events in cycle 24 by the observations from multiple viewpoints, and found that the multiple viewpoint observations will lead to more precise identification of the twin CME event. We investigate the acceleration and the release of particles for all potential instances of CME-CME interaction in 3D space, and found that the efficient acceleration and the following release of SAPs don't require a meaningful interaction between CMEs, but the SAP peak intensity is significantly higher in the event in which the primary CME is close to impacting the preceding CME. And it indicates the potential for the increased seed populations or more enhanced turbulence levels occurring closer to the preceding CME. And following these findings, we raise another question, which is, how long the seed particles can exist after the passing of the preceding CME, and this should be analyzed in the future. Thank you.